Hello, welcome once again to Pale Blooms and Beyond. Thank you for joining us today. If you do like the programming you see here and the musicians and artists that I visit with, please be sure and hit the like button below and also subscribe to the channel. Tom Ciurczak is an American singer-songwriter based in Southern California. Originally from New York, Tom, like so many youth, was bitten by the music bug after seeing the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show in 1964. During high school, he was in several bands and constantly kept a notebook of lyrics for future songs. In his mid-20s, Tom relocated to the West Coast, where he would work in the specialty lighting industry and eventually establish a trio of companies in the lighting world. All the while, Tom kept writing songs, and after attending Steve Earle's Songwriters Masterclass and Retreat in 2014, he was inspired to create his own music and has never looked back. Mr. Ciurczak's first release, 2020's Call Me Ishmael, was highly praised by critics, with a couple of tracks getting international airplay. Since that time, Tom has released two more albums, an EP, and several singles. And my guest has a brand new album, Yorick, coming out tomorrow on CD and vinyl. Well, welcome, Tom.
Hi, how are you, Greg?
Thank you again for taking time out to visit. Well, take us back to the beginning. Where were you born?
Um, I was born at the United States Military Academy at West Point, which is 60 miles up the Hudson from New York City. And my dad was in the band at West Point, and they have a 125-piece band, so it's really probably the biggest orchestra north of the city. And they put everybody that was in the band there for the academy in what they call band quarters. So my whole neighborhood was nothing but musicians. And of course, I knew nothing different. I thought that was normal until I finally, moved away. And then I realized, what kind of a well I had grown up in because it was way different from the rest of the world.
You're kind of insulated there by
Oh, yeah.
musicians. Well, what branch of the military was your dad?
Well, actually, so everybody at West Point was in the Army.
Okay.
And, but, he was a trombone player, and he used to always joke that they didn't send the band into battle, at least not since Custer. So that was the last time. So, so that was his sense of humor.
Right. So he was pretty safe being in the band there. Right. Well, was there music in the household growing up?
Oh yeah, well, like I said, and not only my dad was really into all of those big bands of the Tommy Dorsey and all of those guys. But they the band at West Point would do these Sunday concerts, and they had a big amphitheater overlooking the Hudson, and they would play everything classical music. They would play jazz music. They would play rock music, and I would go to every one of those. So I was just a sponge absorbing all of this stuff. And when I'd walk around the neighborhood, everybody's practicing, so all you hear is sax players and horn players and clarinet and flute players, and that's all. That I was just a sponge for all of that stuff. As I said, I thought it was normal, but apparently not.
You were absorbing that for a while there. Well, what was the first musical instrument you learned to play?
It was guitar. I mean, it really. I like to say, like a million other kids on September 9th, 1964, I turn on the Ed Sullivan Show, and that was the big bang. And we all decided we're picking up guitars the next, a million kids all decided they're picking up guitars the next day.
Yes.
So that's what happened.
Everybody wanted to be a musician at that point. Oh
Oh,
man,
yeah.
especially for the screaming girls as well. That's a
It was really the most amazing experience, I think, across the world all at once.
yes, yes. It was a phenomenon for sure. Yes, definitely. Well, can you recall one of the first 45s or albums that you got yourself?
Yeah, yeah. It's funny. I bought the very first album I bought was Beach Boys Today. My sister My sister bought Meet the Beatles, and I bought Beach Boys Today with, Help Me Rhonda and all of those songs, and I absolutely love the Beach Boys, but I loved all that whole British invasion. It was just I was absorbing everything, so and I love all that music from the mid-60s through the mid-70s. I think that's the center of the bullseye.
Yes, yes, I agree. We have to say here, RIP, send out an RIP to Brian Wilson.
Oh, yeah, so
Do
sad.
that. Was he the last of the Wilson brothers?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
because I know the other two had passed previously.
Dennis went first, then Carl, and then finally Brian.
Right, right. Yeah, sad day for music fans. Well, can you recall one of the first live concerts that you attended, that you went to?
Yes. So I used to again, being that I grew up at West Point, they would bring in a lot of bands, and I snuck in the balcony. I was really young, and I went and saw Trini Lopez, and
A
you know,
Dallas boy. A Dallas. He's from
I,
Dallas.
you
Yeah,
know, if
yeah.
I had a hammer, and
Uh-huh. Yeah.
and they but the cool part is they had this opening act that nobody knew of at the time. It was just a guy, an acoustic guitar, and a stand-up bass, and it was the Smothers Brothers.
Oh, really? Really?
And they were fantastic, and nobody knew who they were. I mean, of course, they went on to fame and fortune after that, but I was like, "Oh, these guys are great." Even as a kid, I thought they were hysterical.
You got to see them in the early days. Wow.
Yeah,
Yes, yes. Wow, that would have been something. I wish I had
and
been grown up like that. Go ahead.
and I remember seeing some of these shows afterwards that I would go in for, like, a dollar, and, I saw the Grassroots when they
Oh,
when they
wow.
first came out, and they were ex I mean, the original Grassroots with, when Creed Bratton was in the band before he went on, and, I saw, Paul Revere and the Raiders,
Oh, did you? Okay. Did you?
with in complete outfit, so, this is all when
Yeah.
I'm a really young kid, and I'm going into these shows for, buck.
Wow. I spoke to Jim Valley. I don't know if that name rings a bell, but he was in Paul Revere.
Oh, really?
Back in the day. So I had an interesting interview recalling all those times. Well, go ahead. What were some other artists, bands that you saw or influences? Talk about some influences.
Well, I I really got into prog rock and growing up in New York, we went through a phase with WABC with Cousin Brucey, and that's where all the music was coming out of. And I was close enough to New York that we would get all the New York stations. But then it all, gravitated to FM music, and you had WNEW. And what was happening on FM music is they were throwing everything into the same, boiling soup pot. And so you would hear everything from Simon and Garfunkel to Yes to Black Sabbath to Jethro Tull to America. I mean, there was really no rhyme or reason. So you didn't have it siloed like you have today. You were getting everything.
Yeah.
And of course, I loved it all. There was nothing that was coming out of that time that I just thought everyone soft rock, I love it. Prog rock, I loved it. Even the Black Sabbath, which scared me with their first album, but I
Yeah.
love it. But I really gravitated towards like the Genesis and
Yeah.
Yes, Jethro Tull, because I really like the complexity of the songs. So,
Yes.
anyways, um, I'm in college, and we have this guy come he comes in from London, and his very first I went to the SUNY Oswego, and his very first stop was SUNY Oswego, and it's Bruce Springsteen. And I didn't want to go. I was like, because I'm listening to The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway by Genesis and stuff like that. I'm like, it's not my style of music. And they dragged me kicking and screaming. And so I'm in the balcony watching his show, and my jaw is just hitting the floor. I'm just so smitten by that, the performance and the showmanship and the whole it was a big Broadway production, and I'd never seen anything like that. I think this was I don't want to date myself, but it was 1976 and or
Okay.
75, 76. And ever since that, I mean, I made a big sharp turn and became just a huge Springsteen devotee and that whole sound. He was using the horns, and of course I grew up with horns, and I listened to Chicago and other horn bands, but they didn't have the same pow that
Right.
Springsteen.
Right. Chicago was my very first concert. So you mentioned them, but yeah, they didn't. They didn't. And then the saxophone and all of that the Bruce, introduced pretty much
And
into
by the
his.
way,
Go ahead.
Bruce likes to say he was a huge fan of the Dave Clark Five,
Oh,
which is why he brought in that sax, because he liked that sax sound from the Dave Clark Five.
right, right. Now that's another one of my early favorites, Dave Clark Five. Yes. The Searchers, another one.
Oh, oh
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. Oh,
their
phenomenal.
harmonies as well. Well, what was the music scene around you like, as far as pop bands or rock bands?
So interesting you bring that up. There was a lot of really talented uh young musicians in growing up. And one of the they had this battle of the bands that WABC ran, uh, and you had to enter, and they'd play your song every Tuesday night. And they would take like 100 bands, and they played the song every Tuesday night, and they'd break it down. Finally got 10 bands. They brought them all into the Waldorf Astoria, and they had this big battle of the bands. And the band from my hometown came in first place and took it. I mean, it's just, and I'm like, I'm never going to be as good a singer as these guys, nor am I ever going to be as good a guitar player as these. And that's when I had the revelation that songwriting is my future. So as young as 14, I started, or even in that range, I just started writing songs and concentrated more in that. Is my strength area, rather than trying to become like a shred guitar player or some type of vocalist, because I'm like, they're just way beyond where I'm ever going to get to.
All
So,
right.
so it's been my hobby for my whole life. That's what I've written songs, and I do it every day. It's like, I think if you're a poet or if you're a painter or something, you do that every day and you get better at it.
You, you,
It's you practice
you,
your skill
you,
sets.
you ply your craft. You ply your
So
craft. Yeah.
it's not something that all of a sudden I said, you know what, I'm going to be a songwriter. And although I think a lot of people, do that, but I've been working at this for a long, long time.
Yeah. Well, you recall some of the bands that you were in while you were in high school?
Well, I give a shout out. Hey, I was in a band called Ludlow Smith, and that's the one name I remember the most. I don't even remember the names of the others, but we used to play all of the local high schools and teen clubs and the church dances. So
Yeah.
so much fun. And I was the lead guitar player, believe it or not, even though I never thought I would be that guitar
So,
player. But
you you
because
never
nobody
went.
else could do it, I did it.
You did it well with any of those bands. You never recorded any material, right?
I think there's some lost recordings, but I've never been able to find them. I've asked.
Yeah. Now that would be interesting. That would be
I've
interesting.
I've asked other members of the band. I'm like, I know we have some recordings. Where are they?
Right. That would be interesting if they were in good shape. Yes, exactly. Right. Well, why the move to the West Coast? And when did you move to the West Coast?
So I got out of college and I went to work. Well, I wound up working at a lighting company. I actually worked for a computer company for a year, and I realized that was never going to work. I was supposed to be selling computers in the Mid Hudson Valley, and they had signed me to manufacturers. And there's only one big manufacturer in the Mid Hudson Valley. I was working for a company called Burroughs, and the biggest manufacturer in the Mid Hudson Valley is a company called IBM. And I was like,
Yeah. It seems like I've heard of them
Can't
before.
sell these here. So I went on an interview and a guy held up a little halogen lamp and he looked at me, he says, "Do you think you could sell this?" And since I had a lot of training and rejection and selling from Burroughs, I looked him in the eye and said, "Absolutely." So I start selling these halogen lamps. And because it was right at the beginning of this whole change in lighting, which has been crazy ever since. But the German company that we were importing light bulbs from bought us like a year and a half later. And they said, you need a West Coast office. So they said, why don't you just move Tom out to San Francisco?
Okay.
I was like, yes, I'm on my way. So I packed up my Volkswagen in 1980 and never looked back and drove out to San Francisco. And I was absolutely in my glories. There was so much happening in San Francisco right at that time. And there was so many musical bands that were emerging there. And my favorite, like Huey Lewis and the News had just come out, and they actually formed there. Huey had come back from London, and they broke up Clover, and he merged together another band, and they started Huey Lewis and the News. The other band that I used to see all the time in the clubs was the Tubes, and they were absolutely fantastic. I can't. So we were like, you thought that the music of the Dead and all those guys had gone. No, there was a lot of stuff that was starting to happen in the 80s in the Bay Area. And I moved to LA in 84, and they had to drag me kicking and screaming south because I really didn't know. But I had a job opportunity to run a Japanese company. So I left a German company and I traded him for a Japanese company, and I ran the US for this Japanese specialty lighting company. And I would go back and forth to Japan 3-4 times a year. And we bought one of the companies that we used to represent in Germany before Osram bought us. And so all of a sudden I'm going back and forth to Germany as well as Japan again. So I had this, at a very young age, I'm global, I'm international, and I'm dealing with, all kinds of factories and people that are,
This
really
was this
industry.
was your mid-20s.
Yes,
Yeah, right, right. Wow.
yeah, it
I,
was
I bet
crazy.
you enjoyed that traveling, like you said, to Japan
Yes,
and
no,
Germany.
and I would have fun because I would go to the buskers on the street, and they would be playing Beatles songs. They can't speak any English, but they're playing Beatles songs. I ask them, "Can I play?" They
Uh,
get the part, I'll play a couple of songs, hand it back, and then they look at me and my Japanese friends that are with me are like, "What are you doing?"
right, right, exactly.
Just having fun. Oh, it's so fun. I There's a place Roppongi, which is where all the expats, which is the international people, live in Japan, and they have a cavern club there, right? Like
Right.
they didn't love London, so they had like a Japanese Beatles band, which I thought,
Yes, yes, yes.
and they were really amazingly just good. They're
Yeah.
super. And I went out to talk to them after the show to tell them how much I really, love their show. None of them could speak a word of English.
Right.
They're singing in perfect
There's
English,
right.
everything, and they can't speak any.
You can't talk to them.
Oh,
Another band I did an interview with. He was in the later Ventures, and
oh
they have
yeah,
in Japan. They have like, I think just about every major city has a, like a Tokyo Ventures, a Yokohama Ventures, whatever. They
you
have
have
all those. Yeah,
you have
exactly.
no
And
idea what a rock and roll world Japan is.
right, right.
I guess there was something going on for tax reasons back in the day, so a lot of people would tour Japan. That's why you see so many live from the Budokan type of albums that were
Yeah,
put out there.
right.
Uh, but Japan, and oh my goodness, the like guitar shops that they have here over there are just amazing. I would sneak off at lunch and just go to the guitar shops and just browse through all the guitar shops because you'll find things in Japan that you won't find, anywhere else. And I see your albums and CDs.
Yes.
Everybody would make special CDs for the Japanese market, and you would get like bonus tracks on the CDs that you don't have anywhere else. So I would also scrounge through all of the record stores to see what I could find that was really cool and collectible over
Yeah.
there.
That you couldn't get here. Exactly.
And
Exactly.
trust me when I tell you, there's a lot of stuff over there that people would record that extra bonus track that you can't find anywhere else.
Yes, yes. They are huge music fans, and especially of Western music. You're right. You're right. Well, talk a little bit briefly about each of the three companies, including your own BLC International. Osram, Ushia?
Osram, Osram is actually was part of Siemens,
Okay,
which is like this huge German conglomerate company, and was one of the top three companies in the world. Was Philips out of the Netherlands was the number one, and then
right.
General Electric, and then like Osram out of Germany were the three big companies. And Osram had a leg in both specialty lighting and general lighting. In the US, they were all specialty lighting because to be in the general lighting market, you needed to have a very strong distribution network, which they didn't have. And so when I started with them, it was all the theater. They call it theater xenon, but it's for the projection at the movie theaters. It's a xenon
Yeah.
bulb. And so I would sell those, and then we would do all the lamps into microscopes in the medical industry, and lamps that would go into semiconductor processing, lamps that would go into making movies, and studio lamps and things of that nature. So I always would say if you subtracted out the general lighting, that you have in your home and street lights and what have you, everything else, that's what I did.
Okay.
And but what happened is right around 83, 84, because they wanted to get into general lighting, they bought Sylvania, GTE Sylvania, and because that had the distribution network, and they wanted to come back from San Francisco to the East Coast. And by that time, I'm like, nah, I don't want to go back.
Not for those, not for those
I don't
cold,
want, but
not for those
let
winters, not for those cold winters. Yeah. No.
let me tell you, it became a $1 billion company. I started there, it was 5 million, became $1 billion company.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so
Big.
I helped grow it to about $30 million. And because I was running the Western region, which was Chicago, Dallas to the coast. That was
Yeah,
I
all
had
the
half
way.
a country. So I had this Japanese company that was the mirror image of the German company. They were their competitor for these xenon lamps, for the medical lamps. They made all the copier lamps in the world, and just all the things that you would never think about for that have light bulbs, you
Yeah.
know, that's what they did. And so I moved to LA to work with them, and it was a small, just me and my assistant, two-man company. But some of the specialty markets actually changed at that time, and I was able to catch a great wave. The semiconductor market really moved into it's a microlithography application where they use a lot of UV to engrave the circuitry on wafers. And TI, man, I used to go to TI all the time.
Oh, okay.
So they started to use lots of these special mercury lamps that were made by Canon and Nikon in Japan that my Japanese parent company was OEMing all the lamps into. So I received the benefit from that. And I grew that company from 2 million and two people to 100 million plus and 200 people in my 24 years there. And then when I'm right at the top, I decided, maybe I'll start my own company. I could have coasted, but I was like, I'll do something different. So I had some friends that I was buying lamps from to fill in because I was private labeling as well as the company's product. And I I bought the company in Japan. And from 2007 to 2014, I went back and forth to Ikebukuro, which is a kind of a part of Tokyo, once a month for a week and a half. It became a commuter flight for me. I would get on a plane in LA, fly over to Narita, take a bus into Tokyo, and spend a week and a half in Ikebukuro and come home. And I decided that's way too much work for me. I gotta get out of this. So I sold that business 2014 to my partner in Japan. And coincidentally, it's the same year I went to the first Steve Earle camp.
Yes, yes.
And I had seen an advertisement, I think it was in Rolling Stone, that he was going to do a Camp Copperhead. And I was a huge fan of Steve Earle. And I was like, I've never done anything like this before, but this sounds like it could be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And he had no idea what he was doing.
Okay.
We didn't know, all the people there. We didn't know what we were doing. He didn't. And that's what made it absolutely
Wow.
just so much fun.
How many would you guess showed up for that?
About 100 people
Okay.
from all over the world.
Wow. Okay.
All over the world. And we all bonded, because what would happen is, during a day he would have classes and he would basically sit there and tell stories. So the same stories he tells on Outlaw Country,
Yeah.
he was telling there. I've already heard most of those stories.
Uh-huh.
But then we would do like an open mic till like 11 o'clock. So from like 8 to 11, we'd have an open mic and everybody would get up and play original song. And Steve would sit there and fold his arms and kind of like fall asleep. And then after that, we would hoot and howl till like 5 in the morning. Would just like big, jam sessions all night with everybody. And it would, and of course, we had to get up at 8 o'clock. So I learned two things. I figured out that one, I was as good as everybody that was there in terms of writing songs. And that was kind of a revelation to me because, I didn't know how to judge. So, but I fit right in, and I made a lot of friends there. And number two, I realized I could go with only 3 hours sleep a night without having
That's
a
the
heart
other.
attack. So there was two very big revelations I got out of that camp.
Uh, oh, that's funny. That's funny. Yeah. Uh, I remember my days back in college and stuff. I did that quite a bit, cramming the night before and things like that.
Yeah, I did
Although,
that back in college, but I didn't think
yeah,
I was going to do it at 50.
yeah, not at that age, not later in life. Well, we'll talk about leading what led up to 2020's Call Me Ishmael.
I came back from the camp, and as I'm leaving, everybody's handing me their CD. And everybody had a CD. And I made friends with and I didn't have a CD. So, I went home and I'm like, I'm gonna have to keep up with the Joneses somehow.
Yeah.
How am I gonna do this? So we were sitting around, I remember, I guess it's Thanksgiving table. And my daughter was in an a cappella group at college, and then she was in a professional a cappella group in Los Angeles afterwards. And she says, I know an engineer that would recorded us. Yeah, let me introduce you to him. And so I went and met him, and then all the dominoes started to fall. We had we hit it off, and he brought in a guy, a drummer. So Brett Grossman was the engineer, Stephen Hacker was the drummer, and those two then started to put everything together. And it's a lot of fun because I had it in my mind I didn't want to do a folky album like everybody else. Like I said, everybody was giving me their CDs, but they were all folky albums. I wanted to do a rock and roll album.
Right. Yes. Yes.
And the first album was quite the learning experience because none of us had really done this before to that level. Brett had worked as an assistant engineer with a lot of people, the guy that did Jackson Brown's Running on Empty, and he'd worked with the guy that did some of the Warren Zevon early albums, but he was an assistant to the guy. And so this was all like our first, like, putting our brains together, see what we could do. I think that after that first album, we really had this massive leap up in terms of quality. We understood how to do it better the second time through. Not to say that there isn't some really good music on the first album, but I just think there was quite a learning curve that we had to go through to get to the other side. And everybody says this, you've got, a lifetime to make your first album, and it's
Yeah. Right.
I'm like,
Right.
I'm telling you, I think the second album and the third album really are superior to the first one in terms of the overall production, engineering. The songs are all there, but the production and engineering really took off. We really were able to arrange the songs, mix the songs, produce the songs a lot better now that we had an idea on how we wanted to do it. And then it's just carried over. This last album, secretly, I recorded 20 songs, not 10 songs for and Yorick
Yeah.
was going to be the second album of the two.
Oh, was it? Okay.
I
Okay.
like I they're both, and it's funny because we sequence the songs. So it's almost like, sitting there on a fantasy draft and going, okay, this is a number one song. This
Yeah.
is a number one song. This is a number two. So they're very, very similar in terms of, so there's another one coming right behind Yorick.
Okay. You got some in the vault, so
Well, the thing is, once you rent a studio like Sunset Sound,
yeah.
you want to get as much recorded as possible.
Yeah.
And we're very efficient in the studio. I mean, we will. What happens is, we'll sit down, we will take my demos, we will then rearrange whatever we want to rearrange. I will record a click track. We will then go in with the musicians for that studio day. We will rehearse to the click track. Then we will go in and we will record the next day at the studio. So everything's fresh and we have everything charted. So I have all the music. I'll chart everything. I've got a click track. So we might only do 2 to 3 takes on a song, and we'll do 5 songs a day. So when we recorded Yorick, it was 5 songs in one day. And we recorded 4 times, 20 songs. That's how fast we did it.
Yeah.
And I read things like, you look at Springsteen, for example. He spent 6 months just recording one song, Born to Run.
Yeah. Yeah, he did. You're right. Yep.
So
It's a different
different budget than he did.
Yeah, that's right. Well, that's interesting. I always like to hear that, the recording process and the sessions and how those go. So thanks for taking us through that.
I think you got to be really organized on that. Otherwise, you're going to spend a fortune.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. You got always keep that dollar sign in your in mind.
The meter is running. That's all I can tell you. You get in. Let me tell you something. Sunset Sound, where we recorded Yorick, there's 3 studios, Studio 1, 2, and 3. I recorded in Studio 1. Studio 1 is where the Doors recorded their first 3 albums. It's where the Stones recorded Exile on Main Street. Led Zeppelin recorded in there. Jackson Brown recorded in there. There are so many ghosts in that particular studio.
Yeah.
And of course, all the other musicians, they're really focused on doing their job. I'm a kid in a candy store. It's like I'm in a museum and I'm looking
right.
at records on the wall and I'm like, Oh my God.
You
Look at
have to
all
be,
the people in
because
here.
you're a music fan yourself, you know.
Oh, I'm a huge fanboy when it comes to that stuff. I mean, I was just like blown away at all the people that recorded in those, and they're like small spaces.
Right,
There was
right.
once one we recorded the Christmas EP in Studio 3 there actually.
Yeah, yeah,
And in Studio 3 they call it the Prince Room.
yeah, yeah.
And
Oh, okay.
I was expecting to be purple, but it wasn't. Uh, but apparently he would bring a mattress and just sleep on the floor there, right?
Yeah,
So not to lose his vibe.
yeah.
And they had this Hammond B3 organ there. And so we used it. And I've been telling everybody that that's the same one that he used in like Dearly Beloved, We Are Gathered Here Today. I'm not sure that it is, but I'm not sure that it isn't. So I keep telling everybody that.
You can't disprove it. So yeah. Well, we'll talk. Going back to "Call Me Ishmael," where does the title stem from?
Oh, so this is where there's two famous opening lines in literature. One is from Tale of Two Cities. It's best of times, it's the worst of times. The other famous opening line in literature comes from Moby Dick, and it's "Call Me Ishmael."
I was wondering if that
And
was pretty
and
cool.
the song,
Yeah,
I remember explain we had this pre-meeting where I met everybody and for lunch, and I was explaining the song "Call Me Ishmael." And I said, listen, I gave him it's a Moby Dick, metaphor, and it runs like a Moby Dick song, but it's about exotic animal smuggling. And it's told the narrator is a parrot.
yeah, yeah.
The narrator's a parrot, and it's not a human. And he's captured, by cartel or whatever that's smuggling these exotic animals. But he's not afraid because he likes to say Jesus is watching, Jesus is here. So you think
Yeah,
he's somehow this very, deep believer, but Jesus was really a Black Panther.
right. Exactly. There's that other take on that.
Yeah,
Jesus is watching. It's the dog in the house. You know,
yeah, yeah,
when the
exactly.
robber
It's
when the
kind of what,
robber.
so
Yeah,
exactly. So
yeah,
Jesus was a Black Panther, and so while
yeah,
everybody goes to sleep, Jesus sneaks into camp and kind of destroys the camp and sets all the exotic animals free.
yeah,
And it's really my one drop D tuning, which Steve Earle likes to do, and I did it a very swampy
yeah.
Steve Earle-esque type of song.
Does have that feel to it.
And
Yeah.
I mixed it with a very like a proggy type of bridge. So I did this thing where I would tell people it's outlaw prog
Yeah.
because I would mix like outlaw country with kind
Right.
of a little bit of a prog bridge in there.
Right. Mixing two genres that you don't normally hear together. Well,
Oh no, not at all.
the two singles from the album, "Roll the Dice" with its all-out driving assault, and "Mine Torn Road," with a nod to Springsteen's Thunder Road.
Yeah,
I hear that. I hear
yeah, yeah.
that.
So they were so much fun. We brought in we first of all roll the dice. We brought in a sax player, and this guy, uh, he's going on. He's the key player with the Jonas Brothers right now, and so he's been touring with them, and he's highlighted their show, and think of his name right off the top of my head, but that's what I do know. And then we kind of played that off against some slide guitar. Oh, it's Fabian Chavez is the sax player, and we played it off of slide guitar, and that was Sarvan Mangwat. Sarvan, if I misspelled your last name or said your last name, forgive me. Played the slide guitar, and that really just a lot of very cool elements in there, and they seem to like that a lot.
Well, we're really popular overseas. Said they got some
I did a
international.
lot of I did a lot of promo in London more than anywhere else, and I probably got about 12 plus interviews on different London, because London might be 20 years behind the US. Right now, the US radio is now streaming,
Yeah.
right? Their playlisters that is the, de facto radio stations today. Everybody's a passive listener to playlists. But in London, they're still very active with a lot of, well, all of England, all still active with the radio, and there's a lot of radio going on. So I say that they're 20 years behind us right now in that regard, which is a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you'll
I
see the
agree.
same thing in Germany. You'll see the same thing in the Netherlands. I
Right.
mean, uh, I got a couple of stations in Germany that constantly are playing some of my stuff. So very
That's a
cool.
good thing. That's very good. Well, another track on there that reminded me of Springsteen on the vocals was Guys Like Me.
Guys like me, that's my sense of humor. So, because it's about a guy that's basically a stalker, and he's stalking this girl who turns out to be a bank robber.
That's
But he,
uh,
you know, she's like, "Get away from me! I'm not interested." It's a Pepe Le Pew type of song.
yeah,
I'm
Pepe.
not interested in you at all. Like, she's going on a bus. I'll take a bus ride, see where she's going. She goes into a bank. He follows her into a bank, and the next thing he knows, she's robbing the bank, and she tells everybody,
my,
hit
my
the
type
floor. And he's
my
like,
type of girl, my type of girl.
he's
yeah.
like, we can still make this work.
Yeah.
It's
It's not too late.
bad.
It's not too late. That's great. I love
some way to turn it
I
around.
love how that one ends up. Yeah, another couple of tracks that I like off of that first album were "Sunny Came Back."
Oh, you know what that's about? So, what's her name that did Sonny Came Home? Who did that? Sean Colvin. So Sean Colvin
Okay.
does a song, Sonny Came Home, right? And she won a Grammy for it. And she plays with Steve Earle. She's got an album with Steve Earle. And she came to one of the camps that he did. And so it's about this girl that goes home and burns down the house where their boyfriend lived, right? And she gets a Grammy for it. So I thought, I wonder if I could write a song from the boyfriend's perspective about my crazy girlfriend who came and burned down my house.
Yes, after she robbed the bank. Yeah,
exactly. But anyways, I flipped that Sean Colvin story over, and I wrote it from the guy's point of view about, oh my God, here she comes. What am I gonna do? Back door open. I got to get out of here.
He's coming back now. Oh,
and
that's great.
so instead of Sonny Came Home and Sonny Came Back. So that's where that one came from. And then, by the way, you mentioned Mine Torn Road, and I love, that's very Springsteen, especially with the piano intro.
Yes, yes, very
but
much.
it's a story about, I do a lot of story songs, and I do a lot of story songs with twists, a third act twist. And it's a place in upstate New York, outside of West Point by the Bear Mountain Bridge. So it's about 60 miles north of the city, where, a lot of deals were made, if you will. And there was going to be a double cross, and they were going to rob whoever, but it turned out to be a triple cross instead of a double cross. So they really, somebody took off with the money, and the protagonist thought everybody died in a fire.
Okay.
And then 20 years later, and this has been on his mind, oh my God, I caused all this. 20 years later, he's down in New York City. He's living on the other side of the tracks, as I would sing. He sees his girlfriend. He follows her home, and he realizes that she basically double-crossed him when they were, robbing this guy.
Yeah.
So I thought it was a very cool, and I threw in lots of names of real places and real people. Well, there was their nicknames. So
Yeah.
I really paid a lot of, homages to people in that song. But my favorite part is that piano intro. It's just,
Oh yes, it's very Springsteen-ish. Yes, yeah. Well, you must have an affinity for bank robbers too, because later
you
on you
know,
have the
funny,
Bonnie and
funny
Clyde.
you should say that. I mean, everybody asked me, it's like, you got a lot of affinities for, jail, car theft, robbing banks, and all of this, criminal activity. And I like to tell everybody that's all in my past. I don't do that anymore.
Good. I've moved on.
I moved. I got a real job. I don't do any of that stuff anymore.
Right.
I just
Before
romanticize about it. That's it.
right. Before moving on, one more track that I like from the first album is Winter Highland Falls. I like that one.
Okay, so um, in 1975, Billy Joel moved to town
Yeah. Yeah.
in Highland Falls, and he wrote his Turnstile album in Highland Falls. And he would be at all the local bars and everything. It wasn't a very big town, but you would see him at some of the Southgate Tavern or the Venice, and really nice guy. And anyways, he wrote a song called Summer Highland Falls. And he doesn't ever mention Highland Falls in the song. He talks about a relationship that's going bad, but he calls it his summer in Highland Falls. He felt that, if Bob Dylan could write, Rainy Day Woman, blah, 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 that he could do the same thing. And I'm like, okay, well, Billy, you never took Winter Highland Falls to do a reprise. Well, I'm going to take that.
You're going to do it. Okay.
So I'm going to take that. And I'm not going to mention, Highland Falls in it. But what it was a song about the decay of small town America and how small town America, used to have factories that have pretty much, dried up, and they've boarded up Main Street, and, people are moving out in droves. And so I wanted to do a song that would be about that. And I thought, well, winter is kind of a very nice metaphor for that as well. So I'll just call it, and Highland Falls is, not what it used to be. But it's still kind of a support town to West Point, which is good. But anything that was manufacturing there is gone. It's a bedroom community for West Point. It's a bedroom community for the city now. But that's it.
Nice. Yeah. Nice tribute to that. As has happened in so many areas in our country too,
Yeah, they're going to replace it with something, but I don't know what something is yet. Right now, we're that caterpillar in a cocoon waiting to turn into some type of butterfly, and everybody's in that cocoon going, okay, what's coming next?
Right. I like that analogy too. Well, the single "Leave It to the Universe" from 2022, did it get a lot of airplay?
It did. So what happened is I had this idea initially to record a Christmas song, and I wrote, because I wanted something for the holidays because they get played over and over. So I recorded a song called Christmas Time in Hollywood. And since I had booked the studio, I didn't want to waste any studio time. So, I did the second song, which was Leave It to the Universe, which again is about, stealing cars and robbing liquor stores. Yeah, I do think there's a little bit of it. That's my go-to sweet spot. I do like telling different stories with twists at the end. So there's always some type of twist or moral story.
Yeah,
And it got a lot of, both of them got a lot of airplay. There's a Christmas album I usually have songs on. It's a compilation album, and that goes out throughout Europe. And so the Europeans kind of, my name is out there every Christmas. My name is out there usually every year. I've got a new album. So I'm starting to get a pretty good reputation. I just need them to take me on tour over there.
yeah, that'd be nice. Exactly. Well, maybe somebody will watch this. You never know.
But
And
That's really a fun song. I don't think
Yeah.
a lot of people have heard that. I'm thinking, I'm thinking of doing a Outlaws and Bank Robbers album and just take all of those songs and put
Right.
them together in one, so that that one also get heard again.
Right. Maybe you should do that. That's an idea there. Well, moving on to the 2023 album, I Ain't Ever Growing Up Volume 1. So when you did that, you knew there was going to be a Volume 2.
I recorded it 16 songs,
Uh-huh.
and I was going to release a 16 song album. And I was huddled with some of my marketing people, and they said, that's too much for people to digest. Let's just split it into two albums. And, and I was like, okay, I mean, 8 songs. I should have recorded 20, but 8 songs will work. So we split it into two albums. And I really think that was the smart move. And songs from both those albums are like highlights of my live set.
I was going to say, I bet you Bonnie and Clyde is a real popular one live.
Oh, Bonnie and Clyde is a showstopper. We actually changed a little bit, so there's a lot of like very cool stops, and the harmonies in there are fantastic. But there's some very cool stops, and then I think they call them pushes in the song. So the songs that we do live out of that, The Vault, Bonnie and Clyde, All Night Long, uh, Ontario Nights. They go over really, really good. We just did a big album release show Tuesday night at a place called Campus Jacks in Newport Beach. Really, really beautiful place. Anybody come out to Newport Beach here, that's the place you want to go to listen to music. They have the best sound system and the bar none in the whole area.
Yeah, yeah.
So, and it
Well,
was
well, your expertise from your lighting days, how's the lighting there? How would you
lighting's really
grade
good.
it? Yeah.
So, it's funny. I was very involved in stage lighting as well as studio lighting, and the whole world of stage lighting, well, the whole world of a lot of lighting has now flipped to LEDs. So we're now moving to light emitting diodes for a lot of things, and the world of filament and gas discharge lamps is gone. And but they can't replace everything. They can they you can't do heat. You can't do infrared with LEDs. LEDs don't like heat. They like cold. They don't like heat. So if you want to heat something with a lamp, can't do it. You can't use them as oven lights. You really don't want to put them over a grill. Um,
No, not unless you want a disaster.
so
Yeah.
and there's certain types of, I mean, they're okay for UV and when you're using certain wavelengths, but as you get deeper and deeper in energy levels, LEDs are not as good. But nevertheless, the controllability and what you can do for like studio and stage lights, because it's digital, you can control these things so much better than you could, when a light bulb I would equate to be an analog. So, when you move from analog to digital, you get so much control power that you didn't have before. But like in music, there are people who still prefer analog over digital. Same thing with lighting.
Right. That's very true. Very true. Well, another track I like off of the album is Action Out There. I like that one.
Oh, thank you. That was that's one that was a lot of sports analogies in there.
Yeah,
Uh,
there. Yeah.
and actually, we trimmed that down. I make it a little bit longer when we play it live, and I haven't played that live in a bit. But that's my big, ode to the sports world, and to try to kind of tie it together with, a relationship that's failing. So I'm always trying to mash a couple of different ideas together.
Yes, yes.
I
Pull it
mean,
in.
I'm very big on the two things that I think are very important. I think it's very important for songs to have, call it ear candy, if you will, but you want to be able to have a musical hook somewhere in the songs, that because people gravitate to musical hooks. And then I'm very big on lyrical hooks, although I'm very lyrically dense, but a lot of people they're not going to hear what you're saying, but they're going to hear the inflections and the hooks in the lyrics. So
Right.
getting the musical and lyric hooks in place in songs, I think is very important, even if they can't understand the lyrics at first. But then I add the extra sweetener. Well, I tell very, very elaborate stories, and I'll tell, part one, part two, and in part three, I'll have a twist. It'll go off in a direction you don't see coming. So, like
Right.
the vault on that album, and
Yeah.
I show you all the way through them. I talk about me and my buddies. We're friends till the end, and we robbed the vault.
Yeah.
Here comes that theme again. But
Yeah.
but there's a guy that that runs a diner, and he only has one arm. And this is true, by the way.
Oh,
There's a guy there at the diner at that particular diner, at Richmondville Diner, and he had one arm, and he would be the cook the late night shift. We would go there for breakfast at 5 in the morning when the bar's closed. And you couldn't run out of the bill because he had a gun there. He'd shoot you. So, I'm telling everybody, this guy will shoot you in the back. He's going to shoot you in the back. I did 2 verses of that. So when we go and dig up this money that we stole, because everybody thinks we did it, but nobody could prove it. We go to dig up this money we stole, and then I shoot all my blood brothers in the back, take all the money.
yeah.
And
Right.
I thought that was such a cool twist. I'm writing, I'm like, that doesn't work. That doesn't work. Oh, that works. I've
Yeah.
set this up perfectly for it.
I like the way you end those songs with a twist, like you said. Yeah. Well, now I'm going to get to I think my favorite song that I've heard from you. It's also on that album, "Right or Wrong Choice."
Oh,
In my opinion, again, one of your best tracks. I even get a little goosebumpy feeling listening to that one, and that's always for me like a mark of a great song. So
funny you bring that up. One of the things we did, which really, really helped that song, and a couple of others on the albums, is we brought in a percussion guy. And I really hadn't thought a lot about it, but my drummer was working with this guy, Richie Cojate Garcia. And it turns out he's the preeminent percussionist in LA. And he toured with Phil Collins just before Phil got back with Genesis, right? And he was doing percussion, but he also was the percussionist for 7 or 8 years with Four Seasons. And, he did it's just phenomenal. I'd never seen so many little gadgets. And he did percussion on 4 or 5 songs on the album. And it just raised every song to another level. That song, if you listen, there's some really great percussion in it.
yeah,
And that's my daughter singing with me on that.
it's that.
And
It's a pretty song, really.
it's yeah, but it's actually a sad song. It's about a girl sitting at the bar looking for a one night stand type of thing, and playing spin the bottle. I use a lot of little metaphors in there, and there's some really very cool stuff that I used with acoustic guitar. I played the acoustic guitar lead in
Oh,
it.
did you? That comes across well.
And I thought that was really, really perfect for that song. And I like the opening closing with it almost has a Fleetwood Macish type of
Yeah,
sound.
I hear that. Yeah,
But I wrote that before they did.
yeah. Well,
That's what
I'm
by the way, my line on Springsteen is he's been copying me for years. I always say that.
okay. Yeah, right.
But that song has a very Fleetwood Macish type of vibe to it, but not you just feel that there's something Fleetwood Macish about it.
Right. I think it's just a really top track. I think all the elements work real well together in that song, and it may be melancholy, but I tend to gravitate to a lot of what you would call melancholy type songs, ballads, and that sort. So
I will tell you one thing. The First of all, I always try to put one love song on every album, and that was the closest I had to a love song for that album. But the very first song on that album, Ontario Nights, I wrote the day after I saw Springsteen in Oswego.
is that right? Okay.
I went back and I was like, he just got into my head so much that that song came out of me. And so that's all about Lake Ontario, because Oswego is right on Lake Ontario. Talk about a snow buried place. Um, so if you hear a lot of Springsteen in that first song, that's why.
Yeah, that's why. Yeah, go back and listen to that. Well, the Christmas California Christmas Tales, the EP. Which song or songs off of that has got the most mileage for you?
Oh, I'm sure it's Christmas Time in Hollywood, because it's gotten released twice. I released it as a single, and then I came back and included it in the EP. So it's got the most mileage. That was so much fun to do.
Was
You
it?
know, we got together and my engineer had this great idea of doing like an Andrew Sisters type of.
Yeah.
So I brought in three fantastic female singers. Don't ask me to give you everybody's names, but they just had a blast doing that song. And you could they arranged it and everything for those extra voices, and it just gave it a real kind of a Hollywood cheesy type of feel to it, which is what we wanted.
That's what you're going for
Because
here.
that one's really got a lot of. And if you hear the song, if you would, by the way, if you ever heard all the demos that I deliver, they're almost identical to what we wind up doing. It's just that then they get filled in much more.
Oh,
So
okay.
I'll do I'll take a DAW and I'll record the bass, the guitar, the drums, so they know pretty well how we're going to do it. And then what we might do is we might say, this verse is not serving this song. Let's eliminate this verse. Or we might say, rather than doing a verse, chorus, let's do a verse, chorus. So there's a lot of different little structure change that we sit down and think about afterwards. And that was one song that we did a lot of little arranging on, but it's very close to what I did. And there's a lot of tongue-in-cheek humor. I mean, if you listen to really read the lyrics, there's a lot of humor in all of these songs. Uh, and that's one that really came out very good. But um, the other two songs my daughter's singing on, and my future son-in-law's on one of them too. Um, so the come on, Rudolph is
Yeah.
about a drunken reindeer. He's gotten a little bit too old to guide Santa's sleigh. So the other reindeers are getting together and like, what are we gonna do with Rudolph? He's spending all time. He's down at the He's down at the well. He's drinking all the time. He can't do this. We're gonna have to take over. And but eventually there's a big storm, and Santa's like, all right, which one of you guys is going to lead? And they're like, he is.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, then you better go sober him up. So
Oh, wow.
that's that story. And it really comes out very well. That's the one with a lot of fa la la's in it. And then I had this really cool idea. It's the only one I've ever done like this, where I did a James Brown kind of homage to like Santa's Got a Brand New Bag. I think other people have done a Santa's Got a Brand New Bag as a title before, but I really James Brown it up
Yeah.
a lot. I did the guitar trills in it. We brought in Fabian again to play the sax on it. And it almost sounds like the Saturday Night Live band there.
Yes.
At one point, I'm like, oh my goodness.
I'm reminded of Eddie Murphy doing his James Brown.
Yeah, doing his hot tub.
Yeah, that's right.
But we did the little. I had to get that little James Brown trill in there with the guitar.
Yeah. Yeah,
and
yeah.
it came through perfect. So I think you could, and there's some very unusual guitar things that I did in that in terms of key changes and just things that you wouldn't expect. But it meshed together very, very well because it's almost like two little songs. The chorus is completely different from the verse, and the chorus is a very Christmassy type of chorus.
Right. Yeah, it did all come together really well. Well, it's nice that those songs, every Christmas too, you will people will be listening to
Well,
those tracks.
that was the idea is like, there's always, it's not a long market, but you got a month every year that people will play these songs.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So they're going to live on. You're right. Well, moving on to I Ain't Ever Growing Up Volume 2 from last year. Uh, Lie to Me is one of my faves on that album.
Oh, that's another one where the percussion's in there.
That may be why. That may be
Yeah,
what I hear. Yeah.
percussion's in there and so and my vocal teacher, Harrison Crenshaw, he's doing the harmonies with me on that. He did the harmonies with me also in Leave It to the Universe. And he's phenomenal. Yeah, really, there's so many things I didn't know that I guess everybody that sings knows, but I had no clue. And I decided I'm going to just take some vocal lessons just so that I learn some of the techniques that I should know. And it was really eye-awakening. I mean, there's a lot of things that I would have never, just shape of your mouth, when you're singing. He would always keep your mouth open. I'm like, okay. And I didn't know things that you could do is like, when you sing a vowel, you try to put a silent consonant in front of a vowel to, so it doesn't sound so harsh. And I was like, you can do that? It was like, absolutely. That's what everybody does. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, yeah. And breathing exercises, I hear about that.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, the other thing that was very important was he said you got to make a breath map for every song. So when we did, volume one and volume two, I consciously had a breath map for every song. So I knew where the breaths are going to be.
Yeah, okay. You got that mapped out. Heaven is a nice upbeat rocker. I like that.
Oh,
Yeah.
that I've had that since the 80s. And that's a relationship song about a fight with your girlfriend and the guy's saying, "Go ahead and shoot me." If you want it. Go ahead, take your best shot. It's the reverse of hit me with your best shot.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, right. There's a
Again,
lot
it's one of those flips.
there's a lot of guns in your songs too as well.
Funny, a couple of my marketing people have said that to me too. They're like, I don't shoot guns, but I must romanticize about it more than I realize. But
Are
the
you a card carrying member of the NRA?
no, no, that's a
Okay.
funny thing. But like Lie to Me again was getting back to that was the only love song really on the album. And I consciously say I've got to write at least one love song on the album. So that was it. And I thought it was kind of people have done that as a title before too. It's not, again, I'm not the first one to use it as a title, but I did it in a different way than anybody else had uh, done it because I'm like, hey, listen, you don't love me anymore, but just lie to me and tell me that you still
Yes, you
do.
do. Yeah,
And
right.
so I thought it was, I did it very, very cleverly, I thought, and I thought it came out really, really good. And the one thing about these albums that I like as a songwriter, is people will tell me I really like that song or I really like that song. And it's very rare that everybody likes the same song. I
Right,
usually get a number of people gravitating to different songs and that is really rewarding as a songwriter.
right. That's very true. I can understand that because you're reaching a wider audience that way. People
Yeah.
like, every one of your songs, somebody likes, or most every one of your songs,
It's
Not,
it's
yeah.
it's that's where the craft is. The craft is writing the songs, and then the joy is seeing them come to life. And the real joy is being able to take them out and perform them live.
Yes, yes.
That was
And-
the next challenge, was to put a, superior band out there to perform them live, which I did.
Yeah.
Um, but
Yeah.
that's you really are taking these from a seed and you're growing it into a tree.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Well, one more track from that album, I Ain't Ever Growing Up. Now, is that autobiographical?
That's true, except for the drinking part.
Okay. Okay.
But just like Guns, I think I romanticize a lot of it. Seemed to fit the story. I didn't,
Okay.
it's like, well, the story's going to be boring unless I'm doing something. It's,
Yeah.
if I'm a functioning alcoholic, that's a good story.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. You
But
admire.
if I'm just your regular businessman, I'm
Right.
not sure that's a great
So,
story. I've got to pepper these, and so
that's right.
I always have this in my mind: is how do you make the story interesting for somebody that's really going to dig deep and listen to the lyrics? How do I make this so both that they see the humor, and two, there's an interesting narrative that goes through it.
Right. Right.
And I think I've sang so many cover songs over the years and played that I'm like, these are great songs, but the lyrics are boring.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've got to do something that isn't boring to somebody.
Yeah.
So at least that's my brain is working that way.
I think it works. I think it works, Tom. We'll talk about a Muscle Shoals record shop.
Uh, so six of us that met at the Steve Earle's first Camp Copperhead, we got together 10 years later. And one guy lived in Alabama, Elliot Clifton, and he put the whole thing together. Me and him talked about it, and I kept encouraging him, let's do it. And he put the whole thing together, and he reserved the Muscle Shoals studio. And we got six of us to go down there. And we worked, I would say, 4 months in advance on Zoom. And um, we actually wrote two full songs on Zoom. The lyrics and some of the chords, yeah, on Zoom. And then everybody contributed an original song. Then we went down and we went to Elliot's house and we rehearsed the whole thing the day before. We recorded it in 3 days, and it's a big right hand turn from anything that I typically do. And so I wrote one song, I co-wrote a song with Elliot, and then there's like five of us on two other songs that we all co-wrote together. And one of the guys we knew from the original camp passed away, died of a heart attack at 40 years old. And we did his song as the very last song on the album as a kind of a tribute to him. So it's like I said, it's a much more rootsy type of album than anything I do. And even the song I wrote a "Hey Hey We Are the Monkeys" type of song, which is "We Are the Copperheads."
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I've talked to a few musicians that recorded at Muscle Shoals, and asking them about the tapping into the spirit of musicians past that had recorded there years before. They said, yeah, it was something else. It was like,
Oh,
yeah, there was that energy there.
talk about it's what a cool the sound in there
Yeah.
is, first of all, the wood smells like I'm in a cigar store. Like it just
Yeah.
there's
It's-
something about that place. It smelled really good, the wood in there. And of course you get these great acoustics from the wood that's in the studio. And it's the home of the Swampers where so legend is there.
right.
So and then so we there's this place, it was a converted gas station, which is a record store. And we stopped in there and the guy said all the greats would come in there after recording their albums and leave stuff and buy stuff. And he goes all the way back to Elvis would stop in there. So I was like, okay. see if we can get permission. We got to use this as the
Yeah,
cover.
right,
We all
right,
agree.
right. Because when you do a search, it pulls up the music shop, the store, the
Yeah.
music store. So, have to dig a little deeper to
So it
find.
was it really it was and we rented an Airbnb uh for Muscle Shoals, which turned out to be like an Animal House experience. Now, I will tell you, we filmed everything. I don't know who's got all the film, but if we are able to put that together and edit it, there's a Spinal Tap movie out of it.
Oh, that would be neat. That would be cool. Yeah, you might look into that and see
Well, we
about.
had two cameras stationed the whole time. So we
Yeah.
had two cameras stationed in the house. We had couples camera stationed in the studio. So I know there's footage. I just haven't sat down with the guys. Okay, what are we doing next on this?
Yeah, yeah, that would be neat to follow through on that. Well, who makes up your current band?
So in my touring band or playing band,
Yeah.
I have Kenny Harrell, who is the lead guitarist, and he's quite quite the guitar player. I mean, he's toured with all kinds of people from Clarence Clemens to the Pointer Sisters, and he did all of the guitar leads in the Guitar Hero video game. So he's just super duper guitarist. And uh, I have Phil Stein currently on bass. I have Melissa Robin. She's my backup vocalist, and she's actually on the current album Yorick as well. She's the only one from my band is actually in Yorick. So I use studio musicians for Yorick. And then my keyboard player is Chris McKinney, and he's primarily he plays in a number of blues bands. So he's a, a blues organist mostly. And then my regular drummer is Sean Dirksen, but he's been on tour for the last 6 weeks with band called Dance Gavin Dance. So I've had Kyan Winnick sitting in the last 3, 4 shows. Um, and Orange County and LA is chock full of the best musicians you can possibly imagine. If you think that the art of musicianship is dying, it's not. There are more phenomenal players than you can and where I live, it's loaded with them. I I made a I had to put a band together, and I was like, how am I going to do this? How am I going to meet everybody? So I started going to all the different open mics, and I started meeting all the different players and all the best players in Orange County, and that's how I put the band together.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. Wow. Yeah,
And
that's a
you know,
nice approach. Yeah, good approach. Yeah, I think so.
I had read that Huey had done that when he had come back from London. He was hosting an open mic up in Marin, and eventually he pulled two bands together. Him and Sean, the keyboard player from Clover, added the guitarist and the bass player from an. But they did a lot of it via open mics and listening to everybody and pulling them all together in a band. I'm like, that's a good idea. I'm going to do that.
Well, new release out tomorrow,
Yeah,
Yorick, which we've referred to a few times. That's exciting.
yeah, and it's the same. I've gone full circle again, like I did with the Call Me Ishmael. I use a literary reference that
Yeah,
nobody gets.
yeah, yeah. Well, I
I
looked it up. I looked it up from
I would say
Shakespeare's Hamlet.
9 out of 10 people have
Yeah,
no idea who Yorick
right,
is, and
right.
I'm like, didn't you
I,
guys take high school English?
yeah, I had to look it up myself from Shakespeare's Hamlet, referring
Right,
to the skull
right,
in
right, right,
Yeah,
right.
right,
So
right.
I thought, well, we knew he was a jester from
Yeah,
his youth that he liked, but
yeah,
we didn't know anything else about him. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to make up his backstory.
right, right, exactly. Well, that hasn't been hit on very much, especially in music.
So
It's
I
hard
thought
to.
I'm going to make up his backstory, and the song came out so good that I called the album Yorick because I thought it was a standout track on the album, and I was like, and again, it's one of those names that people are like you did, like, what is this? I gotta have to look it
Yeah,
up.
right. Right. Well, that's
And then we
interesting.
did it. We did a cool video. I don't know if you saw it, but
Oh,
it's
I was going to comment on that. Yes, yes, I did. Yes, I did. Let me ask you first, was the speaking of lighting, was it hot doing that with all the makeup?
yes, because there was no air conditioning in that room,
Okay.
and it was a
Okay.
hot day.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Okay. I thought it might have been. How long did it take you to get into the outfit and the makeup? The
Oh,
makeup.
we did that all in a half hour. I
Okay.
had the idea early on. We wanted to do like a Renaissance fair, outfit for everybody. And then I was thinking I want to do something, and I didn't realize it, but it's very similar to what Marillion had done years back.
Mer
Uh,
Mer Merillion,
Lord
right? With
Lord of the
the
Jester's Tear. It didn't dawn on me at the time. What I was thinking of was the reason I did one half red and one half black, besides the costume I had, was because of the Star Trek episode that they did where half the face was white, half the face was black. I don't know if you
yes.
have the
I
very
remember. Yeah, I remember
so
that.
I was like, I think I'm gonna do that because that's very much from the Star Trek thing.
Right, right. Now I get that, the connection there. Yes. Okay. Well, I enjoyed the song and the video, the accompanying video. I really did, I have to tell you. I like it the way everybody's dressed up
Yeah,
and,
we my backup singer Melissa just had so much fun. And she was like, "We need a sword. Who's got a sword? We got to cut off his head." I'm like, "Oh, please!" Thank
Yeah.
goodness they don't have a guillotine here.
Right. Well, I think it's apropos because all of Shakespeare's are tragedies, so it has to end tragically, right?
Well,
You know.
this the story. I mashed up all of the Brothers Grimm in there, right? So I've got Rapunzel, I've got Rumpelstiltskin, I've got the Wicked Witch, and actually it was the Wicked Witch pretending to be Rapunzel, and then they
Yeah.
make a deal. She reneges on the deal, takes the money, and cuts his head off.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like what I did with the vault, instead of shooting everybody,
Right.
reneging on a deal.
Right.
I just realized that as we're talking.
Right. No, but I really do like the song. I do, and we'll talk a little bit about what the fans can expect from the album itself.
You know, first of all, I think the songs are all very, very different, and it's a continuation of a lot of story songs. I mean, I open up with a song called "The Watcher," and it's a very, very complicated song, and it's about an alien that is sent down to carve the Nazca lines. I was reading something about the Nazca lines, and I'm like, oh, this could work. So it's about an alien that's sent down to carve these Nazca lines, and for whatever reason, because they're supposed to be like road signs for aliens, right? So you only can really see these images from up above. So I was like, oh, they're road signs for aliens. Perfect. But they don't pick them up. They leave them. So he like gets very, very depressed, and of course, aliens. Who knows how long they live? So I got him living thousands of years, and so he gets very depressed. He goes in the morning. He starts dressing in black, but he gets this idea that I'm going to photobomb all these alien crash sites. So whenever ever they're taking pictures, I'm there in the photo. Maybe my buddies will see these photos and come back and get me.
Yes.
So I take you through this trip, through history, from Stonehenge and the Romans and the pyramids and Tiananmen Square and moon landing. And eventually the ice caps are going to melt because, he's had a lot of experience with other planets. He knows what where we're headed. But eventually they do come back and rescue him. And it's a very cool arc of a song in terms of what I'm able to pepper in there lyrically. And it has a lot of musical things that I haven't done before. There's a lot of style within the music that I've never tried to do before. And my guitar player, who I told you is really a great guitar player, he goes, "It may be the most difficult song you had for me to play."
Oh, is that right? Okay. Okay, a bit of a challenge. All right, all right.
There's
Well,
nothing much for him, but he did comment on. He goes, "Your song is very difficult." We opened up with that, which I thought was, just a great opening song, and then we go into a song called "Wild One," which is my homage to "Born to Be Wild," but it's really about a bunch of my friends that just didn't quite make it out of their youth. They just lived life at, full
we,
speed and
we all know some. We all know people
burned
like
out
that.
young.
Yeah.
And what I love about that, there's two things I really like about that song. I like the chorus because I do a little, very cute little guitar um, riff in the chorus, which catches the listener's ear. Right? It's designed to catch their ear. And then I learned a thing from Springsteen, and that he very often will change keys when they go into a sax solo. So we go into a twin guitar harmony, and I purposefully change keys to lift up that twin guitar harmony so it will stand out more. It's towards the end of the song, and I think it works perfectly. And I like the twin guitar harmony. I use it a couple times in this album, and I kind of learned it from like high school bands playing Allman Brothers songs, and how to play Allman Brother guitar harmonies. And I'm like, I'm gonna use that in this song, and it worked. It's not an Allman Brothers sounding harmony at all. It Maybe it's more Thin Lizzy sounding than anything,
Okay.
but
Between
but
guitars, yeah.
but
Yeah.
it works very well in that song. And so I didn't list it as one of the, because you have to list 4 songs to promote when you put it out to radio, but really that's a fun live song because that guitar harmony and everything goes over very well live.
Right, right. Well, I assume you'll be out on the road touring the album.
Well, we're going to be playing a lot of places in Southern California. Like I said, we played Tuesday night, and that was the Watcher, and we played that Wild One as the second song. So that was just a lot of fun. And then the third song is Yorick, and Yorick is kind of a folk rock mashed together with a prog
Yeah.
style. So you could almost hear, Jethro Tull influence and Genesis influence in that song.
It's got a full sound to it. It's really very accomplished track.
It's
Really.
it's it's got a it's again a lot different from many of the other things that I've written in the past, which is always a goal. So the unifying thing in every one of my songs, of course, is going to be my voice. But so you're trying to say, okay, what can I do? I have to be sometimes in different keys. I can't always write in the same key because then it sounds exactly the same. I can't write in the same time signature. I can't write, so you're I'm constantly thinking how to do this to change things up, to make them sound different, but at the same time exciting for a listener to listen all the way through. You want to keep a song moving. If it circles back too frequently, you lose a listener's ear. So there's a Goldilocks principle you've got to do, which is not too little, not too much, just right.
Just right, yeah. Yeah, you're right. You're right. Well, you've learned that over your years.
Well,
Uh,
this is from doing a lot of this. I mean, I it's you have to get into like positive habits if you're a songwriter, and one of the positive habits is you need to do it every day. And I would tell everybody that most of the stuff you're going to write early as a songwriter is garbage. It's just going to be garbage. But you got to stick with it because you're going to get a diamond's going to come out of it eventually.
Let me ask you this: any of your early songs, have you ever wanted to go back and redo them, remake
I
them?
have. I have. Like I said, Ontario Night, I cleaned it up from that I Ain't Ever Grown Volume 1, but that I wrote um, right after this I saw Springsteen. I will tell you, one of the songs coming up, I revisited and rewrote. and came up with some clever ideas, but which was the one love song on the album, which is top of the rainbow. And that song, we recorded it, and I sat back and I'm listening. I'm like, we're missing something. And I'm like, oh, we gotta add the horns. So that's where we added the trombone and the trumpet, and that changed that song completely. And it almost has a Penny Lane intro,
Yeah, yeah. And then yeah, with the horns, the brass.
but
It,
and I didn't intend it to be a yacht rock sounding song, but um, my PR person, and she goes, I think the yacht rock stations will love this song as well. And I'm like, okay.
yeah. Uh, well, that sounds like it's going to be a really nice collection. I wish stations would pick up more on right or wrong choice. Go back to that and play that more, because I think that could catch on and almost be a hit. I
Well,
mean,
one of the things I haven't done and I've got to start looking at is getting some other artists to record some of my music. And that's one of the projects I have, because I probably am going to have quite a catalog of 100 songs. And of those 100 songs, I'm going to have a good 10 to 15 slow to mid tempo, and I'm going to have another big chunk that are fast tempo. Fast tempos are a lot better for a live show than the slow
right? Yeah.
tempos. So
Oh,
you
sure.
gotta kind of mix
Yeah.
them correctly and
Right.
space.
Yeah, there's an art to that. I know talking to a lot of musicians about how many of the new tracks to play versus the old favorites and how to intermingle those in there. And like you said, slow versus fast. There's an
And
art to that. Yeah, there's
all
definitely.
of that is an art form. I agree.
Yeah,
And but
yeah.
I'm still a sponge. I'm still learning
Yeah, that's still
how to do
absorbing.
certain things, and it never stops.
Yeah,
It
it
never
doesn't.
stops.
I don't think
Uh,
it will. It will. No.
so there's some other songs on that that are there's a song I wrote. So there's a song that I was listening to the Who's album Who's Next, and I
Yeah,
was like, you guys, you missed a trick. Just like I said with Billy Joel, he didn't do Winter Highland Falls, he should have.
yeah,
I'm like, you should have come out with an album after Who's Next. You should have called one You're Next.
yeah, yeah. Right, right.
So I'm like, I'm gonna do You're
Yeah,
Next.
yeah,
Now, it took a complete different turn. It didn't wind up being, it sounds like a Rage Against the Machine combined with, a Who slash Springsteen type of chorus. But but it's got a great slap bass solo in it. I mean, that bass solo, I thought was a brilliant. That was the producer's idea. I thought that was brilliant because I've never seen anybody do that before. Sounded like something out of Seinfeld to me.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's slap bass, right?
Right out of sight. But that song, the song was basically, getting back to Rip Van Winkle. It was like, hey, don't fall asleep under the tree, or the big bad wolf's going to come and eat you. That's
Yeah,
basically.
right. Intermixing those fairy tales. Yeah.
So,
Well, Tom. Well, go ahead. Did you want to plug any of the other tracks on the new album?
well, there's a couple of songs that the other songs that are good. Malleus Maleficarum. Nobody's going to know what that means. You got to look that up. But that's the witch's Bible. So back in the Middle Ages in the 1500s, they had a book that they used to determine whether you're a witch or not. They do stuff like, okay, we'll load her pocket full of stones and we'll throw her in the water.
If
If
she
she
sinks,
floats,
yeah,
she's a witch. If she
right.
sinks,
She was
we're
a human.
wrong. So
Right.
I decided I'd write a song which would be kind of like a metaphor for the Ukraine war, or the war in Gaza, and but mostly about the killing of innocent life. What happens to the innocent people that are not, and I thought it came out really cool because I used these very unusual chord voicings in that song that give it a very ominous feel. And so I like that song a lot. uh, there's another song, Where Do I Belong, which when I was recording before, I think it was the Christmas EP, I'm constantly stepping over people. The homeless people in LA are everywhere on the street, and they've got these blue tarps, and it's a huge crisis. So I thought maybe I can write a song about homeless people from one of their perspectives. And so I kind of there's a lot of, positive outlook from this one guy who's living on the street saying, look, I'm going to get back. This is temporary type of thing. At the same time, he's sliding into dementia. He's like, where do I belong? What side of the street do I live on? Tell me where I belong. So it was a very interesting subject I wanted to tackle there. And I think it came out really good. And then the other song I love on the album is the last song, which is MIA, which which is a tongue twister. I wrote it as a tongue twister, and just to see if the backup singers could sing it. But it's almost got a Ventura Highway type of guitar. I went to the guitar harmonies again, and it's got a Ventura Highway type of twin guitar harmony on it, which really catches everybody's ear. And then the chorus is MIA or Am I in Miami, which is the tongue twister. Because it's about a guy who's bored with life and decides he's going to be a mercenary. So he moves to Miami so he can, take off to Bogota and all these other places, hot spots, and work as a mercenary. Which, again, I go into these same type of subjects, but I do a lot of it with tongue-in-cheek humor. So there's a lot of humor in these lyrics, and that helps me write the lyrics. They flow a lot easier that way.
Well, that sounds really, really exciting. New album coming out tomorrow. Again,
Yeah,
and how can how oh, go ahead. I was gonna say, how can people access that, or where can they hear it?
well, first of all, I'm going to be on all the streaming sites, so it doesn't matter whether it's Spotify or uh, Pandora or iTunes or Amazon or YouTube. But if you do go to them, please follow me because that is really, really important. They have an algorithm. The three, four things that are very important to algorithms are following, streams, which is a tricky thing because you have to listen for 31 seconds for it to be a stream, saves, and shares. So I don't think a lot of people that get involved in Spotify and these streaming sites understand that, but those are probably the four biggest elements in terms of feeding into their algorithm. And then their algorithm will put you on playlists. The more that that they see you moving up that algorithm. And getting on playlists is the name of the game within all the streaming sites. Crazy, right?
Yeah.
But I will have a vinyl album coming out pretty soon for Yorick. And right now you're going to be able to buy everything on my website, which is my name, tomciurczak.com. You could also get there through TokyoTommy58.com if you can't spell my name. And Bandcamp. And I'm getting ready to put them up on Amazon too. I haven't done that yet, but so I'm going to have everything up at all of those sites that you can buy them. And if you want, a lot of people don't collect hard copy anymore, but I wanted to make an album because the place I use in LA is making albums for all kinds of people. It's amazing what they're doing with albums these days. They everything was black vinyl back in the day, and it was like a light. Now it's 180-gram vinyl, and they're doing it in different colors. They're doing it clear, translucent. They're doing it. They look like bowling balls. They have splatter. They have. I mean, it's amazing what they're doing. There's such collector items, and if you go to shows, probably the number one merch item that people buy, well, they buy T-shirts and they buy albums. They buy vinyl. So I said, I'll make some vinyl. I've had to make CDs, and I've always made CDs because the radio stations, believe it or not, want CDs. So and I promote on all the college radios, all the AAA radios in the US, and it's a snowball rolling down the hill. The more that you get out there on a regular basis, the more they know who you are, the more that they're playing yours. You've got to be a grain of sand that stands out on the beach. There's a lot of people that are playing and writing music. So why do they go to you? What do they like about you? Well, first they got to discover you exist. And if they then hopefully your music is good enough that they like it, but you got to at least bring the horse to water and stick their head in the trough.
Right, right. Yeah. Well, spell your last name for those going to your website.
This is the trick. I never realized it was hard until I got the website, and I was like, nobody can spell my name. But it's spelled Ciur Charlie Zebra AK.
So
that's why I took out Tokyo Tommy 58.com. And I took Tokyo Tommy because of my Japanese long, 25, 30 years being in Japan all the time.
Yeah.
So
yes.
My self-given nickname.
All right. Well, it's been very interesting, Tom, and I always like to hear the ins and outs. Again, like I said, about the songs and the recording sessions and what all goes into those. And I know the viewers enjoy that too as well. So I'll be sure and thank Ann, and you thank her for me.
Absolutely. Well, thanks, Greg. This is so much fun. I mean, it's very casual conversation back and forth.
Right.
And
that's what I like.
I like that type of discussion.
That's what I want it to be. That's why I approach people, I say a chat or a conversation, because a lot of times if you throw out interview, they have this preconceived idea, oh, this is what it's going to be. He's going to ask about my latest thing, and all this, or talk more about himself than me. And, I hear that from a lot of people. So I want it to be just kind of a bio, a kind of like this is your life without having all the guests. You know what I mean?
I like that. I don't want to. Yeah. I don't like to be robotic. I like it to be fresh and spontaneous or type of thing. And I think that always works best. So
I do too. I have done, and I still will for those that prefer the written interview. But I prefer this because it is spontaneous. Sometimes with those written interviews, you send out the questions, you may not get them back for months, the answers, and they're a little too thought out. You know what I mean? Person will have time to say, well, is this politically correct? Should I say this? Overanalyze their answers, right?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So I like this.
But something? I guess it's from being in business so long. Yeah. Somebody gives me something, I'll answer it immediately.
Yeah.
I will not put things off to the side and let them sit. And I really do think that's from my business side is I'm real quick to catch the ball and throw it right back to you.
Right.
And I appreciate people that work that way because time is a precious commodity right now.
Yes, it really is. You hit the nail on the head. All right, Tom. Well, thank you again. I want to appreciate your time and visiting and sharing. And again, the new album Yorick out tomorrow. So people, fans, check that out. Viewers, check that out. And you've got Tom's website. And all the best to you.
Hey, Greg, thank you so much. I really enjoyed it.
I did too. Again, Tom. And I will send you, I'll send it to, I guess, Ann. She's the contact, and then she can forward it to you.
Yeah, either way.
The actual edited, probably in a week or so.
Okay.
And then you can post it, on your website, and it'll be on my channel. So
perfect.
All right.
Hey, man, thank you so much. It was a lot of fun.
All right, and say goodbye to the Northern Lights there behind you too. And,
see you, Northern Lights.
All right, Tom. We'll be in touch, okay?
All right.
Bye-bye for now.